Well, it's now March, and I'm past the halfway mark of my 2024 road trip. But many of my viewers have been asking me, where am I going to be April 8th, 2024? And I've been telling them, well, ask me April 9th. But the reason they're asking me is that's the date of the total eclipse. And although this is beautiful, I won't be here because it's not in the path of direct totality. And it's something I do want to be prepared for. I did see the total eclipse 7 years ago, and I had a few issues. Oh my God. Here we go. Here we go. Holy shit. Whoa. It was a phenomenal event. However, there were some things I wish I hadn't done. And one problem I had, that I was spending all of my time twiddling and fumbling with the cameras, that I never really saw the eclipse, only behind a viewfinder. So this time, it's going to be a lot different. I'm going to be prepared, so that's not going to happen. And the first step in my preparations was to determine the best places to view the eclipse, and this was not an easy decision. The path was a narrow band that went from Mexico to Newfoundland, but it was the United States that had the largest strip, stretching from Texas in the south, a few Midwestern states, and up through New England. In Canada, there were a few opportunities just above the US border in Ontario and Quebec, and it would even make an appearance in my home province of New Brunswick before sailing across the Atlantic off Newfoundland. Now for many, this may appear to be a no-brainer, as I was already located in the path of totality in New Brunswick. Could I just stay home and see it there? Well, not according to the experts, as several climatologists had prepared a map in advance of the event as to what was the likelihood of cloud cover spoiling the show. They based this on seasonal weather data for April 8th over a period of time and made these conclusions. Ohio, Pennsylvania, Ontario and Quebec, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and yes, even New Brunswick all had the worst chance of seeing the eclipse due to cloud cover, with a 70% chance the eclipse would be obscured by clouds. That's not good. Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky did a little better, with a 60% chance of clouds predicted. But Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri were at 50%, making it even odds that you'd see the eclipse in those states. But the most likely places by far was the northern part of Mexico or the state of Texas, with a 30% chance or less of cloud cover. Based on that important information, I headed out on my 2024 road trip and eventually made it to Texas to do a little location scouting. And the locals were there to greet me. With little public land to camp on, I had no choice but to seek out private land for the event. Well, right now, it's very quiet. There's nobody around, and you can even hear the birds singing. But in 2.5 months, around the weekend of April 8th, you're not going to be hearing any birds singing. It's going to be a little bit of a party, because the eclipse is coming through here. It's a time to celebrate, and I hope I'm here as well. Going back to 2017, it was a lot easier then, as Wyoming was an arid and sunny state and was only a few hours away from my old address in Alberta. I also didn't need a camper, so just had to pitch a tent on public land. Other people were there, but with lots of space and flat treeless horizons, it was ideal for eclipse viewing. And I learned a lot of tips as well. Plan ahead, so you have the best spot, you have all the supplies. There's a lot of doom and gloom about, oh, it's going to be total chaos and gridlock and no gas and all this other stuff. It never really happened. The big thing is you don't know when the clouds are going to come in. You can't predict the weather 100%, so I was lucky. The weather was perfect. But the big thing is it's so short when it actually happens. You really don't, it just happens in a snap. And I think I spent far too much time just fiddling with the cameras and not just sitting back and relaxing, enjoying it. So there's another one in 7 years. Hopefully by then I'll have learned how to take one. Hopefully I'll be here. Hopefully I'll still be on YouTube. Who knows? Now, as far as photography is concerned, of course that's something that concerns me. You could take a picture of the total eclipse pretty well with any camera or phone, but if you want really spectacular close-up images, you're going to have to at least have a camera that has zoom capability. What I used 7 years ago was a Sony camcorder. I think it was the model before this one. Here's the camera in a black cardboard box with the welding glass on the end of it, just taped in. And a little door so I can open this up. It ain't pretty, but it should work. This is a Sony FDR AX53. It's got a 20 power zoom, which is really good, and it's a Zeiss lens, and Zeiss is nice. Easy to use. Point, shoot, little button there for videos. Stills are a little complicated though. You got this button up here, which is kind of awkward, but it does take a good picture. But the other option I use quite a bit is my Sony Alpha, which is what I'm taking this video with now. It's a 7S. It's one of the first ones. It's about 5 years old. I'm surprised it even still works, but it does. But the nice thing about it is it has interchangeable lenses from wide angle to telephoto. And I just bought this one a short time ago. It's a mirror lens, a lot shorter, a lot lighter, probably a lot easier to handle on the tripod. This is like an off-brand Chinese one. I don't know what the company's called. 500 millimeter f6.3 DG. I hope DG stands for darn good. I don't know. The problem with mirror lenses is you can only have one aperture. You can't stop down, so you have to be absolute perfect focus to get a sharp image. I'm going to experiment with that, but it wasn't expensive. I think I paid around $150 for it or something. So something to consider. I highly recommend, especially if you're doing a video, you need a good heavy-duty tripod. Mine's not. It's all I have, and so that's what I'm going to use. There are some special tripods for astronomy, which are really good, but do you really want to get one for a once-in-a-lifetime occasion? You know, you might use it once and never again. So just make sure you have a reasonably sturdy tripod. But there's another problem, and this is what drove me batty 7 years ago, is when you zoom in right up close to the sun and moon, they're moving across the sky. And so if you set up the tripod, and all of a sudden you notice in the viewfinder, it's going across like this, and you have to keep repositioning, because there's nothing I could do about it last time. It was a bit of a hassle, but this time, hopefully I can solve that. Because I bought this, the Star Adventure 2i Pro Pack. What it is, it's kind of like clock and gears that you put on your tripod, and it's supposed to follow the sun and moon in its path across the sky. So I set it up once on the tripod, and I don't have to do anything. I just have to make sure I'm shooting at the time. I have not used this. I don't know how to use it, and probably on the rocks is not a good place for me to open it up, but here's what I've got. I'm going to take it back to my campsite, have a look at it, and hopefully today I can give it a trial run. I did manage to take some night shots on a clear Arizona sky, like Jupiter and two of its moons peeking over the rocks, the Horsehead Nebula in the constellation Orion, the moon during its waxing phase, and the sun in the day using a darkening filter. With the cameras tested and the location set, I believe I was ready for the big event. I just needed the calendar to move a little forward. I was just ready to film when the bison popped by for a visit.
Hello.
Oh, he's scratching his privates on the post. Well, I'm hoping he won't do that on my camera I left out there, or I'm just gonna have to give up photography. Well, fortunately, the itchy bison moved to another post, so I could now go outside and continue my story. Well, there's a little bit of sun, but it's mostly cloudy here. I'm at Caprocks Canyon in northern Texas, and today I gotta hit the trail. But the question is, where am I going? Now, today is April 1st, April Fool's Day 2024, and in a week, it's the total eclipse of the sun, April 8th. Now, I originally intended to be in southern Texas for that event because, according to statistics, it's got the better chance of being sunny and therefore seeing the total eclipse. However, in looking at the forecast a week from now, it seems one of the worst places to be is southern Texas. And I paid in advance for a camping spot, and I paid a lot of money. But I've got to make a decision right now. Do I go to that camping spot and risk not seeing the eclipse? Or do I throw my money away and go somewhere else which is predicted to have a better chance of more sun? It's a tough decision, but I think I've made it. It's a shame that I didn't spend more time in Caprocks Canyon. It's absolutely gorgeous. Unfortunately, while I was here, it was cloudy and windy and rainy, so I really couldn't do it justice. But it's a beautiful park. Hopefully sometime I'll come back. But before I head out to my eclipse rendezvous, there was one local attraction I just had to see. An original 1928 Phillips gas station, one of the first in Texas. And it was in a little town called Turkey, Texas. Now, I didn't see any turkeys running around the streets, but it does have at least one other claim to fame. This happy guy with a beer is what it's all about. Because Turkey, Texas is the home of Bob Wills. Now, I didn't say Bob Wells, but Bob Wills, the fiddle player. And Turkey, Texas has even honored him with a statue. And why is Bob Wills so famous? Because he's the uncontested king of Western swing, a unique blend of big band music and country. Bob wrote classic songs of the era like San Antonio Rose, Spanish Two-Step, Take Me Back to Tulsa, and Ida Red. But you don't have to be a big fan of Western swing to enjoy Turkey, as there's lots of color and relics from the past to see here. But if curiosity gets the best of you, why not visit the Bob Wills Museum and Texas Record Store, which is a mere 2 blocks off Main Street. Well, you can't pass through Turkey, Texas without seeing the Bob Wills Museum. There's lots of memorabilia to see and songs to hear as you step back into the 1930s to 1950s when Bob's music was at its best. There's even an old phonograph to remind me of how I first became familiar with Bob's band. I have my own collection of country swing that I picked up at garage sales over the years, like the Bob Wills Boogie. I love all types of music, and for a couple of bucks, not only do I save an important part of musical history, but it brings you back to an era where songs made people happy and dance. Although he passed away in 1975, Bob's musical legacy won him many awards, including the Country Music Hall of Fame, the National Cowboy Hall of Fame, and even the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He's even been honored by a postage stamp. And of course, I gotta get a picture with Bob. Aha! Although a recording artist, live shows were his passion. Bob's big band was known as the Texas Playboys, which had nothing to do with Hugh Hefner, and they toured the country in a 1948 bus called the Flexible Clipper, which is still on display at the Turkey Phillips service station. Well, my tour bus is a little fiberglass camper, and it's time for me to move on down the road. As for where I'm heading, I'll leave that for the next video. Please tag along as the story continues.